Hey listeners, welcome to the Atintellect podcast. Today we have with us Romel Joseph, who's a senior manager for product and has been leading and contributing to the digital products industry even before he graduated as a computer science engineer in 2014. A multi-instrumentalist, singer, swimmer, mentor, mental health activist, loving son, and a caring brother, all these things along with spirituality have kept him grounded and, in his words, have helped him achieve a perfect week for years now. This conversation is not just another product management talk. Here we go deeper into the art and science of product management, and we not only stop there. We discuss a few broader topics as well, such as mentorship, mindfulness, and so much more. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into the show. Hey Romel, welcome to the Intellect podcast. It's so great to have you here. Um, when we first talked about this, like you being on the show, and we had that conversation a couple of days back, I think it was, I've never seen somebody more intrigued and excited to share their journey on a podcast, and it was really um, inspiring for me because like since that conversation till now I was thinking, how should I frame it, and you, like we talked about for an hour then, and you made it so much easy for me, to prepare for this. So technically
Yeah,
it's my least prepared podcast, but I know
yeah,
because of your enthusiasm and your story and everything, it's going to be a great one, not for me but for the audience as well. So thanks for doing this, thank you for taking out the time and everything else.
absolutely. And thank you for having me here. I think one of the things that I've actually made it to, my playlist in the past 2 weeks, even before we had that initial conversation was your podcast because I'm someone who's avidly been consuming podcasts, but that's much like a good majority of people out there ever since the pandemic also. But I think your content also the diversity and the breadth of it has got me really interested. And that's why we had that conversation. And now in retrospective, I wish that we were actually on record during that conversation because that I think that conversation went on for an hour or so. That
Yeah.
itself would have made good content for a lot of people to consume. But anyway, since we are here, I think I am really grateful for you to give me this opportunity and looking forward to the conversation that we have ahead.
Yep. Great. It's a pleasure, to be honest. So I think a good point to start this is, because you have so much depth in your background and your journey. I think it'll be a great starting point for this conversation. So why not we start with a high level journey of yours, and then your personal growth story, and then how you, like I think you broke a lot of barriers to be where you are today, and I think it'll be very inspiring for us to listen to that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my career trajectory over the past, I think, closing in on 10 years now, has roughly been in and around understanding, a little bit of breadth of everything, and trying to understand where do you want to sort of invest your depth in the typical T-shaped structure. And by way of that, and as I walk you through how what are the kind of different roles you people listening to us would understand that my breadth has been product management, right? And there are various roles that kind of contribute to product management. I started off as an engineer, did about 2 years of hardcore development work. It was kind of part time. It was split across my third and fourth year of engineering. I was working with Microsoft on their partner payroll. Did some bit of work for the Center for Railway Information System, which is the IT wing of the Indian Railways. And this kind of gave me a flavor of okay, this is what engineering is. Then I went on to do about a year of customer service, right? And not pure play customer service, but it was kind of an account management role as well, where it was more customer focused and it was more product driven, um, with American Express, right? And later on, I went on to do some bit of work on the information security and disaster recovery side, which broadly now the world knows as business continuity planning, right? A lot of traction came to that topic right out of the pandemic when people realized that hey, we need a plan B, and The plan B guys are basically, and guys and girls are basically business continuity. And then product management happened, where I scaled roles from a business analyst or a product owner to a senior product owner, product manager, senior product manager. And very recently, I actually, got into Gartner, where the plan is to sort of look at their .com portfolio, Gartner.com, and try to do a lot of good things around it. So that's been my journey. So I've played various roles. I can't really call myself as one person who at this year and stage was doing product management, but holistically that has been the entire flavor. It's like the different ingredients that went into cooking that lasagna, right? At the end of the
Mhm.
day, it's a lasagna, but you actually put in a lot of different things into it. So I think that's been the journey so far for me.
Great, great. Yeah, I think it's the breadth of it is too wide, and so you did all of this stuff like towards software development, customer service, uh, but then you chose product to be your calling, I'd say,
Yeah.
towards the end, and then now at Gartner you have more product uh, focused role.
Yeah.
So how, like, a quick question, like how many years you have been focused towards like hardcore product within your career?
So interestingly, this is something that, as a question, even I ask myself every time I sit down for the annual review. So, as a practice, I try to also review myself, much
Mhm.
like what we do with our managers, right? So,
Yeah.
I have been asking this question for a while now. What was that one period where I can say that, okay, this was hardcore transition into product? And I realized that there is no one particular year where I can say that I deviated from, or I moved to product management. Why? Because back when I was an engineer, we were still trying to solve customer problems, right?
Mhm.
Be it with any of those two companies that I work with Amex, on the customer service side, I was still trying to solve customer problems and trying to sort of orient them around the different products that we had. And when I actually moved on the product management side, and actually just, maybe on the face of it, or on the paper value of it, actually called myself as a product owner, then also I was solving customer value. So in concept, I have been doing product management throughout my career, at some stage, shape or form. But I think I got the titular aspect, as they say, in 2016. 2016, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's still a good number, right? Five,
Yeah.
6 years focused
Yeah.
towards product. So I think that's that's good experience.
Yeah.
Um, when we were talking, I remember from our previous conversation, e- I have been talking to a lot of product managers recently through
Yeah.
podcast and offline as well, because I'm myself interested uh,
Yeah.
in this field, in this domain as well. But you mentioned the context of the beautiful art and science of product management, which was
Yeah.
something new to me. Um,
Yeah.
I have a sense that your understanding of product is a bit different uh, than the regular nomenclature. So why not just we directly dig deep into what do you mean by the beautiful art and science of product management, how you see digital products being shaped up, how I've seen it in the recent past, and what the future holds, basically.
Absolutely. So let's probably tackle it in those two major chunks, right? Because my take on the beautiful art and science of product management, and I'm glad that you still remember that terminology. I think that's just a self reflection that I do, and I keep telling probably a couple of mentees that I keep meeting on weekends that this is how I see it. If you're able to see it this way, बहुत मजा आएगा. You'll actually have great fun with it. But so when I say art and science, and I'm not really hard coding this into the typical definition of what forms art and what forms science, because that's a whole different debate altogether, right? Because
Mm.
art has a science crossover, science has an art crossover. But through my lens, and this is a lens that I have cleaned and refined over the past 10 years, I have understood that product management, at the very very seat of it, it kind of touches those key areas that quantify and qualify as art and science. And when I say this, I'll take an example of product management for, let's say, a mobile app, right? And let's take a very, very, very relatable example, even for our audience, right? Let's take Instagram. The Instagram as a product and what it has come to be today is a derivative and a result of a product management center of excellence, or a product management powerhouse, basically. What went into building Instagram? There was a customer problem or a customer pain point. And in this case, it wasn't probably a pain point, it was a opportunity area, market opportunity, where there's not a lot of products out there that are doing this. There's not a lot of products out there that enables customers to just post pictures, and there's a lot of traction just on that content type, right? So they had that nailed out. So there was a sense of market research that went in. That's one layer of product management, where they understood what people really want, and what they really need. And there are two different sciences, and I'll probably go a little bit deeper into it as we move forward in our conversation. But understanding the user's need versus their want and being able to define it. So that's one layer. The other layer is, okay, I understand what they need. What do I do with it, right? That's when the aspect, the art aspect, I would say, heavily comes into play, where, okay, I need to give them a product, but how do I design it so beautifully well, right, that they do eventually have that drive to use it. Just one time usage may not be enough. We want them to be actually customers who come back and users who come back and use it on a daily basis. And there's a whole behavioral design science around it, which I am now trying to go a little deeper into, and as time allows, we can speak on that subject. But that's the art aspect primarily, where we talk about UI and UX, right? So they put some thought into what the logo should be like, as basic as what the logo should be, what should be the color, the pixels, and everything. The third aspect is, okay, now we've nailed down what the need and the ask is. We've nailed down, okay, how would this product deliver that need and that ask. The third thing is, how do we keep this engine running, right? And that's where the everlong strive of any digital product that you see today in the market is, right? Unless you're a startup where you're just focusing on growth of the product. Usually products sort of peak and they go into a phase where they're now talking about engagement and retention, right? So that also forms a third aspect, where it's not just important to create a kick-ass design. It's not just important to nail the customer ask and need. It is also very important to be relevant in the market, right? Understanding that what are the different kinds of products out there that can possibly be competitors to you, or maybe they're adding more value to your customers than you today are doing. So all of these aspects, right, there's psychology involved. So I'm just picking out keywords now: psychology, there's design, there's the visual aspect, there's engineering, of course, the beautiful part of engineering, and then there's some bit of business as well, there's some bit of marketing as well. I think all of this coming together, and you can look at this in for any profession or any domain, right? You take sales, you take marketing, even they have crossovers into these different aspects as well. So I think product management, what drew me into product management was basically this aspect, that it forms the epicenter of a majority of all of these things, and having a good grasp of all of these things leads you to be a good product manager, and ability to also learn all of these things leads you to be on a path where you're growing your as a product manager.
Great. Yeah, a very dense topic, but I think in a nutshell, it's like product management happens at a confluence of, like they say it's like engineering, design, marketing, but I think a lot of operations is involved as well. A lot of sales is involved as well. So it's like this mix of all these
It's a mix of
forces
everything, yeah.
that are acting together, which is great. And I think that's why it makes it it is actually a difficult job, but it also very fulfilling and rewarding as well. So that's why I got attracted to it, and that's why I'm very much curious about it. But yeah, I think you explained it pretty well. The whole uh, art and science of product management.
Yeah.
So that's good. I want to come to the mentorship piece, because you mentioned mentees in the answer to the question. But I'll park the thought for a second, and I'll ask you this, which I remember I asked somebody who is a product designer. I asked the same question to them from a design perspective, but I'll ask you from a
Yeah.
product perspective.
Mhm.
Um, so you mentioned that a lot of design thinking, a design holistic process goes into product and stuff like that. Now imagine a situation. You might blame me for being an interviewer here, but this is something
Yeah.
I really think about when I'm thinking about product. Like, because product management is actually a people's, like, it's not people management, but it's a people's game, right? You have
Yeah.
to
It's a people's game. Yeah.
interact with a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. You have to be aligned on the agenda and the goals and stuff like that. So I like these situations do come up when you're doing the product thing. So let's say you are a product manager, and you you have some design suggestions, or you think that
Mhm.
the product can be improved if you change the design or flip the design in a certain way. You go
Mhm.
to the product, like the design team,
Mhm.
and you suggest them, this is not working. I think we can change the design this way, uh, to
Mhm.
increase like the metrics that you're tracking, or any KPI target that you have. But the
Right.
design team pushes back, saying that it's not really aligned with our whole design ethos, or you know it's way out of what we are thinking about it, and stuff like that. Or let's say the
Mhm.
CEO pushes back, saying that it's really not aligned with our agenda, or the goals that we have. Now how do you
Mhm.
make them believe that, from a product manager standpoint, what you're saying really makes sense, and I think we should focus on that.
All right. That's actually a very, very good question, because it'll open a couple of dimensions for us to sort of go deeper into. But I'll address one of the things that you mentioned, and because I'm heavily inclined to be a believer of it. Product management is basically a people oriented management, and it's not direct. It may or may not be direct people management, but at the end of the day, and I truly believe this, the products that you're making, that's for used by people. Who are you making these products with? Your UX team, your engineering team, your marketing team, they're also people, right? So at the end of the day, and that goes for any domain out there, but product management, at the heart of it, at the end of the day, you're managing people, you're managing expectations, and you're managing everything in and around people. So that's one aspect. Now the other aspect is, to your question, let's say, me as a product manager, if I feel certain enhancement or a certain change on the design aspect can be done, and at the end of the day, let's say the design side or the CEO side, they give like a pushback. And I think first and foremost, now this also touches on one of the qualities that we need in any profession, but also in the aspect of product management, is having the humility to be able to understand the fact that while I'm a product manager, I do not have answers to everything. My job is to get the answers. My job is to not know the answers, right? And that being said, if I'm faced with a situation where, from my singular user's perspective, I like a certain design versus another certain design, and I take it to my design partners, they come with experience of having conducted user research for throughout their career, right? Because that's what they do. That's their jam, right? They do user research day in and day out, and that's what leads to their design. So if they would want to insist on a particular design, I would also want to be appreciative and open to the fact that, okay, why do you think so? And that's a learning for me, right? And I won't deny that there have been situations like this where, me, just from the two pair of eyes that I see, I had certain recommendations, and when I took it to them, I realized that, okay, this is a particular, there is a psychology behind it, there's a behavioral design behind it, and I got to learn something new from it. And I think it's more around that aspect. So to your question, is there a need to challenge it? absolutely, the need is there. Why? Because you feel that way, and you should actually voice your
Yeah.
concerns, because that's one of the qualities of product management, right? You be vocal. But is there a need to win that conversation? Absolutely not. It's there a need to learn something from that conversation? Absolutely yes. So I think that's how I've always taken these things. There are always people out there who know their stuff, right? And they're known for their stuff, they're hired for their stuff, they're paid for that stuff. What you need to do is just voice your aspect. You put that as an opinion, not as a statement or as an order. You will definitely learn something out of it.
Wow,
Sure.
that's great. That's beautifully answered. You're hired.
I'll
Then
start next week.
yeah, no, I think that's a great answer and a great perspective, because definitely, like people in the design team or the engineering team per se, uh, they have years and years of experience doing the same stuff with different projects, different design templates, and everything else, right? So probably if they have a design in a certain way, there's some science to it, which uh, we are probably missing out. But yeah, if you have a suggestion, you have to be, you have to have the humility to put it out on the table.
Yeah,
But then if
yeah,
it doesn't get accepted due to so and so reason, then you learn out of it, as you said. That's a great answer, I
absolutely.
think.
I'll just probably just add two more lines over here, because
Mhm.
the scenario was more oriented around the design aspect of it,
Mhm.
and of course, the acceptance over here is the fact that we have design oriented experts. Now let's say I'll flip the scenario a little bit. Let's say if the disconnect was more on the customer need or the customer ask or the actual problem statement of business use case, that's where probably my experience would sort of weigh a little bit more. Let's say if I'm having a conversation and the designer says that, do we really need to sort of build it this way? Is that going to be solving the customer ask? That's where anyone in product management need to be proficient enough, need to do the right kind of research enough to say that, okay, they should be thorough in the fact that, okay, this needs to be done versus this does not need to be done. So that's the area probably where maybe in this case the UX designer would learn a little bit from that conversation. Likewise, tomorrow the call to take to the call to actually do this development on a particular technology stack versus another technology stack, I would rest it to the discretion of the engineering side, because they come with that kind of experience, right? For me, it is more of a, oh hey, by the way, I in my understanding, I think it is better off on a React JS framework than maybe JavaScript as an example. And they would be this giving me that discretion to tell me that, you know what, this is the reason why we want to do it over here. And I'm gonna basically just learn from that conversation. So it's basically a dividend of what you have been doing well, and what you know that you can learn, and trying to find where you fit in any conversation. You
Makes
and I are
sense.
talking, I would learn more about probably podcasting from you. Why?
Mhm.
Because I know certain things, but I may or may not have done it, right? You have done it. Similarly, maybe for you, since you have an interest in product management, but I have done certain things, certain failures that I have, right? It's going to be more from your perspective, where you're putting forward an opinion instead of saying, I think this is how it needs to be done. What do you think? So
Yeah, makes sense. Although probably you know more about podcasting than me, because I'm still learning. Uh, there'll be better people out there to learn podcasting from. But yeah, I get the sense of what you're saying. Uh, Everybody has a certain skill set, has a certain background, and
yeah.
accepting that in the team, and really, uh, what do you say, acknowledging basically their experience and their background, and giving them
Hmm.
opportunity, to have a say on that,
Hmm.
really I think it's an humbling act, and it really
Yeah.
propels the team forward. Somebody
Absolutely. Absolutely.
who has like a customer service or operations experience in the last 10 years probably will take a decision around how a product will impact the operations in a better way
Yep.
than somebody who doesn't have that experience, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's a great thought. um moving ahead with mentorship, I really wanted to focus on that piece because I think yesterday also I saw your post on LinkedIn where you said that you're open to a lot of, like, you are doing pro bono mentoring, and then
Yeah.
you're doing I think you're also teaching a lot of I'd say like
Young,
students
yeah,
or
yeah,
people who want to break into
yeah,
product management, right? So
yeah.
when did you start doing that? What was the motivation behind that? What's your process look like? Can you just double on that for a bit?
Absolutely.
And
So,
where can I write my name as well? How do I sign up?
oh, you're already in the program, man. Through the course of this conversation. No, but I'll tell you why I took to this, right? So there's more meat to the matter, and it's a little bit more digestible. I realize, so there's one thing that we've all grown up listening to, right? Teaching is a noble thing, and why what makes it noble is because the people who have taught us, including our parents, right, they teach us through their experience, they teach us through their years of whatever turmoil that they have gone through, goods and bads and everything. Now I took that aspect and said that, does does teaching or mentorship, right, does it require years of experience, or does it require a category of experience? And I decided to stick to the category aspect. Why? Because there are certain things that, let's say, probably I had my own struggles on, something as basic as being an engineer. And this is what, 2012, 2013, 14 ish, where you want to sort of swim lanes, right? Pick another lane. You've invested 4 years in money wise, time wise, in engineering, right? And you wanted to sort of, you decided to sort of build yourself as an engineer, and then you want to switch lanes. There were a certain set of challenges that probably, even I went through at that time. And I did break through, right? By There wasn't a set formula, but there were certain things that I was reading up about, maybe speaking to people. So that forms one category of things that maybe I can talk about, where people are wanting to do that shift, right? They went out, explored a particular domain, and specifically I can talk a little bit more about if they went out as an engineer, and want to do that switch. That's one aspect. The other aspect is maybe getting into product management. Now, product manager or product managers, senior product managers, the management title sort of rings a bell in all of our ears to say that, hey, you know what, this is a role probably that I can target once I, do an MBA, and preferably in the thump of the things that we have been seeing in the Indian education ecosystem, preferably do get into one of those premier colleges. Right now, uh, I'm someone who does not really carry that. I don't even carry an MBA, right? I've only done my engineering. That's the only last formal education that I've got, apart from certain certifications that I went on to do. So that forms another category of things that probably, at least through my experience, I can help people navigate the 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 ocean of people out there who are still of the same notion that management roles can only be backed by a management degree. I don't believe that is true. I mean, of course, I had my own hurdles where I was also listening to the same things, even growing up, right? I did. I realized that, okay, there is this doorway, and now that I am through that doorway, I felt that it was my imperative to also let other people know, right? And maybe if any way I can actually sort of help them out, do whatever I can. So there are these areas, and that's the area where I try to sort of shed some light, do whatever little that I can, for people who are still struggling in that area. So one of the very important aspects that go into when I actually start conversation with someone, and uh, it's not a formal thing where we go into a curriculum or anything. It's something as basic as you reach out to me on LinkedIn. You're like, hey man, there's this role that I'm looking at in your company. Really interested in joining it, but I'm currently in this domain. Can you help me out? and it goes both ways. They also directly reach out asking for a referral, and we'll touch on those aspects if time allows again. But my first and foremost goal is to try to understand that why is it that they want to take make this move. Understand where are they coming from, where do they want to go to, what is the driving factor,
Yeah,
and then be able to better help them. So I think that is one of the key ingredients, I would say, into my mentorship approach, and truly knowing where they want to get to. And also, if I'm not able to help them with it, just be sort of point blank around it. But I think that's where it is. And LinkedIn is, I think, has been my primary source. Someone reaches out to me, or someone refers in their own circle that, hey, by the way, reach out to Romel. He helped me crack this particular role, or helped me get some guidance. So I think that's probably the source. Going to the second question that you asked, so in some
great.
little ways, if I can sort of contribute, why not?
That's great. And I think it rings a bell in my head because I I have a similar thought process, and I think I have a similar set of experiences as well.
Mhm.
I'll try to narrate a brief story just to fill in. Um, so, like during my engineering days, probably second, third year, I was completely lost on what I really want to do after engineering. Um,
Yeah.
I I like I always wanted a semi-technical role because I was I I liked like programming very much, but I really never wanted to become a software developer because from a preconceived notion that I had was like software developers would just sit in front of their computers and code all day without talking to anyone. So Ramel, I think I had a similar story to share because when you're uh, talking about your mentorship experience, it rang a bell in my head as well because during my engineering days, I was a bit lost on what I have to do in life, like after engineering, basically, because I always wanted a semi-technical role because although I liked programming, but I also liked, interacting with people, working on the non-technical pieces of the business,
Mm.
marketing, operations, and stuff like that. So I really wanted a role which is a mix of both. Um, so, but then I never really knew, if there, like in the industry, did these roles existed? How does things work in, at a practical level in an organization? Because I feel that to a certain extent, the university and the colleges, I think probably at my end, probably it has improved a lot now, but there's a lot of disconnect between what happens in an organization once you enter into the corporate world and what they teach you at the university, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like night and day apart. So I was very confused and stuff like that. But towards the end of fourth year, I made my way. A lot of things happened because I talked to a lot of people outside the university who were in the industry and stuff like that. And by the end of fourth year, I had a good grasp of what I wanted to. But then that sort of daunting period in my life where nothing was making sense. It
Mm.
really uh, it um, it had a lasting footprint on my experience at the university, and where I really wanted to help people who are currently at some stage in their university trying to figure out what they really want to do with life, so that they
Yeah.
don't have to go through that same hurdle, same sort of anxiety, I'd say, uh, that I had to go through. So um, I think the onset of the pandemic, because I had a lot like so this happened before the podcasting thing came to a picture. I started an initiative. So I have also been mentoring a few folks here and there asynchronously.
Oh,
Um,
that's great.
yeah, and it was mostly towards like people really wanted to get into a business analyst role. And
Mm-hmm.
because I have been working in a similar setup since the last 3-4 years, I was able to guide them onto what skills that they can pick up, how they can navigate within their current jobs to have a role like that and stuff like that, and which had good outcomes. So I thought, why not do it on a wider scale, more
Mm.
professionally on the side? So I started
Right.
this initiative, which I called, I think it was called the Sterling Experience or something, which really, what I really wanted to do with this, to have one-on-one all group sessions of people who really want to break into a certain industry,
Mhm.
and they are pretty much unsure on how to do that. So, but then I started it, ran it for a couple of months. The response was good, but I really didn't continue through it, because what I realized was that the people who were like coming to me
Mhm.
for advice,
Mhm.
probably at some stage I was not, because at that point of time I just had like 4.5 years of experience. So
Mhm.
I didn't find myself really up to that level that I could really advise to, a lot of people, and it would also make sense, because
Right.
I still haven't seen that much uh, world. I'd say, at that point. You, on the other hand, are like more experienced than me, and you have a very diverse set of experiences through different domains in an organization. So I think it really makes a lot of sense for you to guide them. But it was just like my personal feeling, and I thought that I was not doing justice to the work that I started, but so I
Mhm.
pulled it back and stuff like that. But at
but
at
but but
some
still, I'm very sure there would have been some aspect, just on that note, because it's a very very interesting thought. First of all, of course, I would love to know what led to the name the Sterling Experience. Is it named after the popular whiskey brand Sterling's, or I'm
That's
not
what
too
my
sure,
friends
but
say. That's what my friends tease me after that. But no, I don't know. It was some random thought, 2 a.m. thought, when you just can't sleep, and you just one.
yeah.
I think it was also like the domains were not available, so I had to register a website, and for some reason the Sterling Experience was available. So
Ah.
it was some weird combination of things. But yeah, I got a lot of laughs on that whiskey thing, which was not the inspiration though.
Oh, I like the fact that you're actually straight up honest about the fact that it was one of those 2 a.m. jotting downs, because a lot of the times people create something and then they try to justify it. This is why I named it this way. But a lot of examples do sort of say otherwise, right? Because a lot of the big brands and the big names out there, they do not really have a true meaning. Something came up, and at the end of the day, as they say, right, what's in a name, right? So
Hmm.
people put a name out there, and then eventually some experience that they had in their journey with that product, with their offering, with that content, they try to sort of juxtaposition that into the name itself. But I like the fact that, because that has happened a lot with me as well. When you're just jotting down something, and sometimes you just write down things for no good reason. You find
Yeah,
that reason later, right? Life is a big example, right? You find the meaning of life later. You don't find it today. I haven't found it so far. I'm very sure you haven't found. We're still looking for it, right?
yeah,
But life happened, right? You were born, and now you're trying to find, okay, why did this happen? Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. So no, but I think you're doing some great work doing it pro bono for people, and um, yeah, because I've been through that phase where I was lost, and I'm pretty much sure a lot of young folks out here are uh, go through that same journey, and if they can get in touch, I wish that I had someone to talk to at that point of time who was in the same position and who was doing the things that I wanted to do, but unfortunately I didn't have, although I got access to that network late in my career. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, I think that's a great initiative. And I think one of the motivations behind starting this podcast um, was that only to, like, if you are talking on this podcast and somebody who's a budding product manager listens to this
Mhm.
conversation and gets, let's say, an actionable plan on how you navigated through those stages.
Mhm.
I think it's doing the same thing as mentorship does. And this is what I call indirect mentorship. So technically I never
Yeah.
had direct mentors. Like, I don't have like a career coach who I'm calling up uh, every day or whenever things go south. who are advising me at every stage, but I've had indirect learnings, indirect mentorship from people who I follow, who I really admire. So, like if I'm reading a book on product management and I gather some actionable insight from that book, that's mentorship, right?
Yeah.
That person is not
Right.
standing in front of me or talking to me, but he's talking to the book, or she's talking to the book through the book.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. That
And
is true.
if I'm if I'm reading a framework across product market fit on Medium, let's say,
Mhm.
it's sort of an indirect mentorship. So you get to learn from them. So I really do advise people at some stage, because a lot of people really want like this direct mentorship thing, which is good if you get it.
Mm.
But like a lot of people get busy at times, they are not able to provide feedback whenever they want it. So rather than, we can also focus towards indirect mentorship in a sense that let's read what they've written in a blog, let's listen to their talk or a podcast which they recorded 6 months back, and you'll get to learn a lot of things from that. So
Absolutely.
that's how I learn. And I think, but with what you're doing, I think it's probably the most fundamental and the most important part of your career, if you look back 10-20 years down the line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's basically part A and B of mentorship. With having a mentor, having an actual mentor, you get the liberty to be able to be very directed in terms of I need help with this. But then there's also an aspect where the mentor in that case may not really have done that aspect, right? They are probably focused on one aspect. So another way to get indirect mentorship, as you rightly mentioned, I think that's a term that I will be definitely popularizing, so with your permission, because I like that usage, because it's indirect mentorship where you have a question and then there's an ocean of resources out there, and now with the popularization of the internet, go ahead and try to find it, because technically if you think about it, YouTube as of today has 70,000 years worth of content. If you sit down today, do not take a break, watch every video, you would need 70,000 years, I think, worth of time to go through it. Similarly, I think I was reading this anecdote. If you actually sat down today and wanted to read every book out there, you would need to read at least 10 lakh or so books per year to be able to actually finish it in your lifetime, or something like that. The numbers might be a little skewed. So what I'm saying is there's so much of content out there, and I'm not even saying books or YouTube is the way to go, but there's content out there, and the question, right? You just need to ask the answers. So be
Yeah.
it a person or be it through any resource that you find, I think that's absolutely great. The thirst should be there.
Yeah.
Pani mil jayega, you'll get the water, but you need to be thirsty for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's brings me, like, I remember this quote from uh, Naval Ravikant. I'm not sure if you have heard his name. He's pretty famous on Twitter. He's the
Uh-huh.
founder of Angel List, uh, and have done other great things.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
so there's a quote.
The startup hiring community angel list,
Yeah,
is it? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
okay, okay, got
So
it.
there's a quote which rings like every time I see it on Twitter, it just makes me smile, because it says something like this: you don't need a mentor, you need action. So
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of times we would think that, I'm not doing this until I find a mentor, or if I had a mentor, I could have been really become good at that and stuff like that. But what all you need is, take the first step, take the plunge, and everything
exactly,
else will fall into place. Another
exactly.
quote from him, which is on books that you mentioned, is that I had this anxiety a couple of years back, that when I got into reading, that because every time I read a good book, I would be like,
Mhm.
how many, like, there'll be thousands or millions of these really good books which I would
Mhm.
not be able to read in my lifetime. So I had
Yep.
that notion registered
Yeah,
in my brain. But then I read this quote that you don't really need to read all these books.
yeah,
You what you really want is find the 100 best books that exist on planet Earth, and then read them repeatedly. So I think
exactly.
that's a better framework to we are absorbing, this video, that video, rather than invest time to see, what are the few resources which are really good, which are really high
Yeah.
quality, and then do
Yeah.
it all over again. So in the
Exactly.
recent past, I've acquired this habit that if I really like a book, I would
Hmm.
read it, and then a couple of months later pick it up again, reread it, and then it starts getting registered in my brain, and that has helped quite a lot. So I would really do a good research on picking up the next book,
Hmm.
but then if I really like it, I won't just read it once and put it somewhere else, but I would keep it somewhere nearby so that and pick it up 2 3 months later as well, which I've started. But we'll come to books at a later stage. I really
Absolutely.
wanted to cover a lot of stuff which was very very interesting to me when I was going through your profile and going through your story. So
Hmm.
this brings me to the next piece. I think if I remember correctly in our conversation, you mentioned that there's some stuff going on where you're um, like there's some work that you're doing with product school, probably a webinar or something. Do you want to discuss a few things about it? I think you have some strategies on the background which you
Hmm.
you are really refining and probably you present.
Yeah.
So why not just we'll go like very briefly through those strategies and how do you apply it in the field of product management?
Absolutely. So interestingly, so product school for the uninitiated, product school is basically doing a lot of great stuff in the product community. And it's they're trying to move towards a more holistic approach as well in terms of their content. And someone reached out to me a couple of months ago, and then they asked me if I'm interested in sort of doing like a short webinar, and the topic can be of my choosing, and then we can sort of do like a recording and everything, and they'll help out. So that's basically what I am working on currently. Now, when they asked me what is the kind of topic that you want to speak on, I think point blank, the first thing that came to my head was that one thing that has actually helped me be a more well-rounded human being, not just a product manager, not just a student, not just a son, not just a brother. Every aspect of my life, I feel I've sort of shaped it around. It's kind of like a framework, which now is being popularized as the five whys, right? In a better explanation of that is basically getting to the heart of anything and everything, right? Being inquisitive around anything that you see, everything that you see around yourself. So that is in now I'll sort of take the lens of product management and how that fits into what I'm trying to put together for this webinar is the concept of the five whys also applies to product management, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to build out a product, or you're trying to solve a customer pain point or a problem or an issue with an existing digital solution, you can actually apply this, and get to the heart of it. Because, and I'm forgetting the name of the person who actually popularized this notion, but then there have been various flavors of this, so you can't really hold it to one particular person. But if you consecutive, so I'll take it in two ways, the short form and the long form. The short form is you're faced with something, ask the question why repeatedly for 5 times, and five is an arbitrary number. You will get as close to the root cause of it, right? So we do it a lot in our problem solvings when you're trying to figure out, okay, why did this issue happen with this product? Or, okay, the customer needs this particular product or this particular solution. Why does the customer need it? Then they go on to express, okay, because I need to meet a certain need. And then we repeatedly sort of, it's an iterative process, and then we get to the heart of it. Now that's in product management, and I think more on that as I actually sort of do some bit of writing and content on the webinar itself. Now I'll tell you, for the interest of our conversation right now, and for whoever is listening in, uh, it can actually be applied in life as well. It can actually be applied in as a constant notion for learning, right? I'll tell you, I so we hear a lot of things about habit and having, nurturing good habits, right? I understood the importance of habit and the fact that you can actually build both good and bad habits without any difficulty. It's actually at par. People say that developing a bad habit is easier compared to developing a good habit. But I eventually got to a point of realizing this a couple of years ago that there is no easy or difficult. You can actually garner any habit, be it a good habit or a bad habit. And I'll tell you what's interesting is how I got to this realization. So I think I was going through uh, just random contemplations, right? I was going through what are Google's top 10, top 20 searches for that year. I think it was, I think 4 years ago. I'm not too sure on the on when it was, but I just sat down. I said, hey, you know what? I want to really understand what people are trying to Google and search for. And you'll be surprised to see that the trends were primarily YouTube, Facebook. These were the keywords that people searched for by a majority, and they were in the millions tag. YouTube, Facebook. So that speaks to the fact that people are more oriented around going to Google, typing out that particular website's name or that brand's name, and in the search results, then clicking on the website itself. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you the fact that once you are in a habit, it doesn't matter if that is difficult or it takes you more steps to reach it, you are in the habit, right? You are consciously or subconsciously in that procedural way of functioning where everyone is more privy to going to Google, typing out Facebook, search results load, clicking on that first search result, and then going to Facebook or YouTube, right? Now, think about this. When they say habits are difficult because it requires you to take more difficult steps and everything. Now, take this example that I mentioned, right?
Yeah.
It's easier for you to type out facebook.com on your web browser and land on facebook.com. You're actually adding 2 or 3 more steps, right? And there's an additional latency. It might be very minute, but that made me realize that, okay, it's all about how you are wired. That's why the concept of being wired is so important. And that's a concept of consumer behavior or consumer psychology or behavioral design and everything. But that's another dense topic. Maybe we can just speak about it as we find time. But that helped me realize that, dude, garnering a habit, good or bad, there is no distinction. It's just a matter of making your body and mind accustomed to that way of working. You get into alcohol, you get into smoking, let's say. You're getting your body accustomed to that. You get into a workout routine. You're getting your body accustomed to that, and it gets to a point where you're doing it as a course of habit. You wake up at 6 a.m. By 7, you're hitting the gym, right?
Makes
So
sense.
I
Yeah.
think that helped me sort of pivot a little bit, and how I sort of tapped into at a personal level of benefit was having a workout schedule, even for that matter, practicing mindfulness, and a lot of the good things that I know for a fact that I've been doing right now, and I wish a lot of people out there can pick it up. It's through habit. It's through this notion.
Makes sense. Have you heard the? Have you read that book, Atomic Habits? By any chance?
I actually skimmed through a very audio version of it. I think a 10-minute brief. There's an YouTube channel which gives you a brief synopsis. Not proud of it. I wish I could have got time to sit down and read it. But
Yeah.
yes.
No, I think you should read it. I read it. I think last month,
Ah,
and it's a great one. I think it'll give you a lot of epiphanies when you're reading it, because you have like the whole habit process that you told is distilled into that book in
ah,
more detail. And yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. So definitely pick whenever you get a chance. I think it'll be a quick read. It's not too big, 250, 300 pages. So
oh, great.
yeah,
Adding that to my reading list.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I think you should pick it up, because I think a lot of your personal work has been around habits. So I think you'll
yeah,
uh, really enjoy it. And
absolutely.
I totally agree with the 5W framework. And if you just think about it in another way, I think uh, if you observe children, right, like young
Mm.
kids, I think they
Yeah,
also learn in a similar way. So if you
absolutely.
uh, let's say if you focus at a conversation that a child is having with their parents about something, and they're asking why something is happening, they would
Mm.
repeatedly ask why until they get an answer. So
Absolutely.
I think that strategy was somewhere related to how kids learn. And I think how kids learn is again a good research topic in itself. It really defines how learning happens at a human level,
Yeah,
and I think you have nailed it with that framework. So I would
absolutely.
love to see that webinar whenever it comes out. Uh, and yeah, I think that's a great strategy, especially to think
Absolutely.
think stuff around product and ideas and habits and stuff like that, because everything
Absolutely.
everything is related.
Like actually can be applied to, like I said, I applied it in my own getting a schedule and getting fitness into that whole picture. uh, it can be applied anywhere, so that's absolutely true. And the same aspect on how kids look at a problem statement. Of course, there's a in the, at least in the Indian ecosystem, there's a running joke as well, right, where they say that when a kid does present this thought, a typical Indian household response would be ki, focus a little bit more on studies. I'll say the Hindi rendition of it because it's a little
Yeah,
bit more natural, and then कि इतना दिमाग पढ़ाई में लगा दे,
yeah,
ठीक है बढ़िया हो जाएगा. So focus a little bit more on studies. So I mean, I think there's a good paradigm shift happening in that culture also, in the generation of the parents right now. But typically I feel that that should not be inhibited, not then, not now, and not probably when you and I reach the 70-year mark or the 60-year mark, right? If you just are inquisitive about something, go ahead and ask, right?
yeah,
if the
makes sense.
if the person fails to answer you, then the only dumb person out of that conversation is the other person, not you,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
definitely. Asking questions is something which is not really weighted too much, but it
Yeah,
really has changed trajectories in the past. So definitely one of the most important aspects
absolutely.
of human nature is inquisitiveness, as you say. Um, cool, great. Moving ahead,
Yeah.
um, because we touched based upon your like mindfulness practices, the habit that you adopted of working out on a daily basis. Just wanted to double down on that and just ask you, um, so do you have this certain, like a routine of certain mindfulness practices that you do to de-stress yourself? Like how would a typical day look like, where you're fitting in work as well? You going to the gym daily, or you do some other activity like reading and stuff like that? How does
Mhm.
it look for you, like being sane in this crazy
Yeah.
work schedule, right?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, even before the pandemic, right, there was one thing that I initially was struggling with, was doing a certain thing at a certain time, which typically made me vulnerable to the aspect that every day is unexpected, right? And that's the beauty of every day. You should actually wake up every day not really knowing, maybe at least 30 or 40% of it. If you know 100% of what you're going to be doing that day, then it's probably just a copy paste to the previous day, right? So
Yeah,
that being said, if I've realized in the same course of scheduling and daily routines and everything, if you're too hard bound around doing something only at a certain time or only for a certain duration, you're kind of depriving yourself, and you're kind of also giving your brain reasons to kind of miss the mark. As
yeah,
an example, I used to, there was some time in the evening that I used to sort of keep out, keep aside for reading, right? And I realized that okay, evenings, you have to keep it open as well, right? There can be probably guests who come over, your relatives come over, maybe your friends come over. Now, I'm not saying that that's going out of the way of the core concept of discipline, where I am doing this, I am doing it at this time. I don't care what happens. Okay, what if Armageddon happens, right?
Yeah.
The world is going to come to an end. You'll have to sort of break it, right? You'll have to break that thing. So I'm not saying people coming over, your relatives coming over is Armageddon, although in some cases it might be. But
Mhm.
the case in point here is be flexible enough to adjust these uh, course corrections, but also be determined enough to not really deter that from what you want to drive out of that day, right? Have that delta of the fact that okay, 10% of my day is going to go into workouts. I think I said too much. 10% might be a little too much, but have that split and be okay, be open, be accepting of the fact that that might change. Today I might not be able to do like a 15-minute, 20-minute cardio. I'll just have to focus on weight training, right? I might not be able to do, I don't know, my typical word page count would be 50 pages on a very busy day. I might not be able to do it, but I'm still doing it. I am still going back to it. And with that, I think another flavor of daily routines is have some bit of everything incorporated in your day. Have that breadth. And uh, this is basically a callback to when we started talking about breadth initially in the conversation today, but it still is a great thing to have, right? Don't be monochromatic in a day where it's just work and you're just sleeping and probably you just have to eat just because those are certain basic things that you need to do. And have a flavor. Read just a page, or maybe like I said, going back to Atomic Habits, the reason why I actually went to the audio version, which was a 5-minute snip, was because I couldn't take time out to read that day and I was too tired. I had a what's that called when you stare at the screen for too long? Today it's called, I think, Zoom fatigue. But back
Yeah.
in the days, it was called something, right? I don't know. So I didn't want to look at anything. I just wanted to plug in my earphones and just listen to something. And that's when I discovered that. And that's when I realized that, okay, at least I got that part done. Maybe not through this means, but through another means. So that is how my routine has been. Now, to actually going to the heart of your question, what is it that constitutes my day in whatever percentage or form? I think definitely physical wellness, because that absolutely is a driving factor. We keep hearing this from a lot of fitness enthusiasts and fitness influencers and everything, but my core belief is coming from a place of practice myself, where you get into whatever physical activity, and if at the end of the day your physique, right, and your physical wellness is a projection of yourself to not just you while you look at yourself in the mirror, but also to the other people. A good driving factor would be getting that in order. I'm not saying be have those six-pack abs or whatever, right? Just be
Mhm.
mentally happy for the fact that hey, I'm doing something for my fitness, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. I think knowledge and working your brain muscle. So categorizing into physical muscle and the brain muscle. Consume good content, right? Also give time to consume, more of a leisure content. It's okay to sort of even take time, even every day, I would say, to watch a sitcom, watch a stand-up comedy clip or something. And then of course your core revenue generator aspect, which would form a majority of your day.
Mhm.
Like for most people it might be their work, their 9 to 5 work, let's say. For entrepreneurs it's their journey,
Mhm.
all of those things, right? So I think that'll be another aspect. Some bit of flavor you should also carry for people outside of you. Now this is a concept that a lot of people do not really appreciate in their daily routine, because we become so centered and focused around us, which is also good. But at the end of the day, you can't exist in this world by yourself, right? You still need people around, and a lot of those conversations also lead to learnings, right?
Yeah.
Be it from your friends. So I think that aspect would be there. And I think just leave some time aside for just random stuff, because a lot of that, much like what you were saying, right? You were up at 2 a.m. You necessarily did not have anything scheduled at that time.
Yeah.
but because there was nothing at that time, you could actually incorporate something, you know.
Definitely.
So I
Yeah.
think that forms the entire day.
Makes me remember another quote from Nawal. I think I've read a lot of quotes from him. So he said that it's better to be bored than busy, which is
uh,
uh,
it's a
the quote is like better bored than busy, which is kind of, if you think about it, it's like a 360-degree for what society thinks. Like it's not a
mm,
mainstream sort of thought process. But I think, especially for creative work, which is what I've realized, like
mm,
podcasts or newsletters, blogs, books, writing, art, music, you
mm,
if your calendar is like packed from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m., you don't have a minute to like capture your thoughts or just look away from the screen. When
right.
will you give nature a chance that something creative comes to your mind? Because if you're doing
Absolutely.
meeting after meeting, meeting after meeting, you're meeting three people now, three people later, post lunch meetings, pre lunch meetings, after
Yeah.
dinner meetings. There's no time that you have to think about what you really want to do.
Yeah.
So as you
Absolutely.
said, because I was bored at 2 a.m., I was not able to sleep. Like I didn't have anything to do. That thought came into my mind, and a lot of things about podcasts as well. I'm doing a lot of my thinking work
Mhm.
when I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
So all the great thoughts
Absolutely.
come when I'm, let's say, going on a walk all by myself. I'm not listening to podcasts. I'm not listening to music, and which I deliberately try to schedule. So I when I used to go to walks, I would put in my earphones and listen to music or podcast or whatever, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Which I thought, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm really improving my ability to do podcasts. So I'm learning new techniques. But
Right.
then later I realized was, even if I'm listening to a podcast, I am listening to a conversation that somebody else generated, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
now I started scheduling time where I'm not listening to anything. I'm just walking all by myself, no earphones, nothing, and that brings
Hmm.
me gives me the opportunity to have like original thoughts,
Yeah.
which
Absolutely.
translate into podcasts, which translate into conversations at a later stage. And
Yeah.
from a contents perspective, like if you see Netflix, if they are having some other licensed content, it's not that effective compared to like Netflix originals, right? Or Prime
Right.
originals. That's where the
Right.
core, what do you say, the core uh, X factor comes in. Who
That's
can
true.
produce
Yeah.
the most original content? And original content can't come if you are just licensing or just
Yep.
channeling others' content through yourself. So you have to give your time and effort to that as well, which I think ties back to what you're saying to some extent. So
Absolutely. I think the analogy of you can never paint Mona Lisa on an already full canvas.
yeah,
You need a
an
plain
empty
canvas to
canvas.
start
Yeah,
with, right? Right. So I agree. I think that's creativity. I mean, again, it's you need to be in that mindset though. Like to the example that you mentioned, that because you go out on those walks and eventually decided not to listen to anything, but since you're already in that mindset, you already have that passion or that drive, is the reason why your thoughts can lead in that direction,
yeah,
right? So that has to be there, and of course, that comes with a lot of the things that you actually do when you're occupied, if you
yeah,
think about it. So it's a yin yang situation, right? It's a chicken and egg. What comes first,
definitely.
what comes later. But at the end of the day, if you're in that frame of mind, absolutely, that free time is needed. Yeah.
Yep, makes sense. Um, I was very curious. We touched base upon books earlier as well.
Hmm.
Which book is on your bedside table currently, and what are your top three recommendations for times from the books that you've read?
So I mean, I think I'll just sort of take like I'll be Robert Frost and do the road not taken here.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends know this, my family know this. I am not someone who's actually finished, a lot of books. right? I have condensed it. I
Mhm.
have read maybe a condensed version of it, read up about it, read key concept, but I think not there are not a lot of books that I can actually say I've read it from cover to cover. But
Okay.
I'll answer it in two parts. What is the book that I'm currently reading?
Mhm.
It's this book by Neil called Hook,
Yeah.
right? And it
Yeah.
talks about, you would have heard, right? So it's
Yeah.
I feel that it's like a digital product version of, probably, as I now understand from you, Atomic Habits, right? It kind of narrows it and funnels it down into,
Makes
okay,
sense. Yeah.
what makes, products habit forming, or all of those things. So, and why I got to this, why was because I'm doing some research on the work side of things, where I'm trying to build something out. Can't really disclose a lot of details right now, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to build something out where we are wanting to get the consumer habit a little bit more, you know, habit driven and action driven and all of those things. So that's when came across this book. Now, do I necessarily need to read up through every chapter? Sure, of course, just to understand the depth of that subject, but just to understand the breadth of, okay, what are the key areas that he's highlighting, I actually just skim through it and then just go through the key concepts. Now, to that end, are there three books that I can recommend? um Maybe not, because either I'll think through in a lot of directions, or I'll just probably not be able to
Yeah.
name one. What I can definitely recommend are three sources or three methods where you can gather knowledge, right?
Okay.
Which has proven well for me.
Mhm.
One is, of course, books, right? If you can, again, depending on whether you want to finish it from cover to cover, or at least just have that breadth, but books definitely do, because that's the ancient way of knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Someone decided to pen down something, and then a book was born.
Yeah.
The next is, of course, in today's day and age, and you have to be very cognizant about which era we are speaking on the subject of books, right?
Mhm.
Traditionally, we've been talking about books, and everyone talks about books, but in the day and age today, where the medium of consumption is primarily short,
Mhm.
right? Right, we're talking about reels, we're talking about what have you, and it's primarily audio video based. it's
Yeah.
not it's not as much
Thanks.
literary or written words.
Yeah.
I feel that there is a lot of content being generated over there, and not being consumed at the same rate, right? So, um I'll tell you. So one of the other reasons why I never really wanted to, at this stage or in the past couple of years, go for a formal MBA, was because the key concepts of management, which at least I needed to apply in my key area of work, I was consuming that content from point A, books, and point B, content out there, right? YouTube, Reddit. There was so much content out there. Quora, to some extent, by the way. I also just probably post a question there. Hey, is there anyone out there who's actually figured this out? And so that's basically the second area that has helped me a lot. So consuming content. The third area is people. So we have books, we have content in whatever digital form, primarily being, of course, the YouTubes and the Googles and the Wikipedias and the what have you. And the third being people, right? Because a lot of the knowledge that I have received is from talking to people around, you know, um, the elders, right? Because they can speak from a place of experience. Now, there's always an ongoing conversation and debate on the cultural shift and the cultural, I think, bias that they carry because of their day and times and versus our day and times. Keeping that aside, there are still certain translatable and transcending things where we can definitely learn from them. So, of course, obvious source for all of us would be our parents, or probably whoever has been a guardian figure in our lives.
Makes sense.
Second would be our immediate circle of friends. So, of course, they are the source of a lot of your vices, but they're also source of a lot of your good things, right? The things that you know today are also shared experiences that you probably had with them, or
Mhm.
you learned from them. And third would be probably people who have, you know, done something, or are on the verge of doing something, or have actually cracked something in their respective lines of field. And this is where a key concept of, when I go into, I seek help, or I seek mentorship from someone, right? I don't really hold the bar of how many years has the person been doing that, or what is their proficiency per se. I'm actually currently in the tutelage, if you want to call it mentorship, of someone who's just about a year or two into digital marketing, because that's an area that I wanted to understand, and also understand that from someone who did some bit of uh, formal education, and
Mhm.
also maybe did a year or two into it, because they will be in a better position to understand that, okay, this is what I expected of it, this is what the reality is turning out to be of it.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the spectrum, who are people probably 45, 46 years of age, who have done a lot of good things on the sales side, because sales is another area that I wanted to sort of understand how things have transcended. So people, so books, uh, content, digital content, and people are the three sources that I always go back to, and has always helped me, and I think I'll continue to
Great,
be on that path.
great. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks. I mean, DC sources definitely. There's a lot of content out there. Books, I think, great one as well, and people definitely a good trifecta. I'd say. So really, thanks for that thought. Great. We'll touch base upon a couple of things before we wrap up, but I think we'll do very quickly because we're running a bit over the clock here.
Yeah.
Again, we discussed this in the last conversation as well. So you are you're going on a road trip across Kerala. Um,
Yeah.
I think in a couple of days. So do
Tomorrow,
you?
to be precise. Yeah.
Oh yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing a bit about it? How did that plan came up, and then also very briefly, you can touch base upon where all have you traveled up till now, and then what are your plans of the future as well?
Absolutely. So the how is typically the whole. It's a family oriented reason. So I have an engagement and a wedding, and then um, kind of like a roka in the family.
Oh,
It's my own sister's roka. So for the
nice.
uninitiated, it's more like a formal, hey, my daughter wants to get married, does your son want to get married, let's get married,
Yeah.
that kind of this thing conversation. And then one of my first cousins is getting married as well. So that's the occasion, and that's what requires me to travel
Wow.
to Kerala. And the reason why it's a road trip is because I try to clock, is something that I've been doing for a while now. I try to clock as many kilometers on the road and behind the wheel, and being the person driving, in the driver's seat every year. And I try to roughly target it at like 1,000 kilometers or so,
Mm.
every year at the very minimum. So I saw this as a very great opportunity because it's roughly 700 kilometers one way.
Okay.
So onward and back would roughly set
Very
me
nice.
up for the rest of the year. But that's just going to be too mathematical. I felt, so I'm currently in Bangalore. I'm from Delhi though. um Delhi and Kerala. So I'm primarily from Kerala, have been born and brought up in Delhi, and now I'm in Bangalore for the past 2 years. So I think it's a trifecta there again.
Mhm,
But Bangalore to Kerala is actually very, very scenic, and one of the things that I really look forward to when I'm on road trips,
mhm.
doesn't matter if I'm driving or not, is uh, along the way you can choose to actually take a very more very scenic route, but
Yeah,
then you'll have less stoppages. You'll have probably like a small tea stall, right?
yeah.
Or maybe like a small eat out and everything.
Mhm,
I like that whole experience. And another thing is, now going back to the previous question, right? People.
mhm.
Now, there are certain things work wise and otherwise that you learn from the people around, but then there are certain life experiences. Where do you go to learn that, right? Where do you go to understand that, okay, there are people out there who are in a different kind of profession that probably we don't even know, and there are certain things that they have gone through or they're going through, good, bad, ugly, whatever that is. So I make it a point to actually make these stoppages just for the sole purpose of maybe having a small 5-10 minute conversation, with the person who has that stall, and understand that, okay, how did this idea come to be,
Mm,
right? Why this over maybe, I don't know, anything else that they could have done. So I think it's everything about that whole experience. So the drive is basically opening me up to all of those experiences. And to answer your second question, I've been someone who's been very fond of traveling, I think the one place that I've traveled to the most, which might be the counter for a lot of people in India, is Goa. I've been there for sunburn. I've been there for solo traveling, and I do a lot of solo travels as well. I've been there with friends. I've been there with family. So that's one place I have been to. I have been to Thailand, which is basically just a different nationality for what you would experience at a beach anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've been to a lot of the northern regions because my majority of my life and times have been based out of Delhi, so that exposed me to the hills. Not really going into the debate of whether the hills and or the beaches are better, because to every man or woman his own. But I think, yeah, so that has been my trajectory. And I what I have as a goal in terms of just traveling is be more be more aware of places or good exotic locations in India, of our own nation, and I'm not saying go to every location in India, but at least be aware of the good places, the not so trodden places. And then I want to sort of explore a little bit to the outer regions, and do that a little bit. So, and I also try to gather as much trivia as possible in the places I go to. So I was this place not too far from Bangalore called Humpy, and one of the trivia that I learned when I was there was one of the monuments over there is actually what we have in I think one of the denominations of the notes that we have. So if you flip the note, I think it's a 500 note. I'm not too sure if it's a 200 note. That place is actually what Humpy is popularized for. So when I went to that place is when I got to know, okay, this is also an interesting aspect that I never knew. Right? We carry notes every day, not right now so much, but we used to, right, at one point in
Yeah.
time. So I think that's what helps me. I think, again, thirst for knowledge even when I'm traveling, but not really having that as an overhead of something I need to do, but
Mm-hmm.
something that I just do by force of habit, tying back all of the things that we spoke about today, I think.
Makes sense. That's a good notion. Uh, Especially being mindful of the fact that beauty exists in India as well, and uh, I think
Yeah.
before um, setting a journey to explore the world, I think you should explore the country as well, because definitely a lot of untrodden places out here which will mesmerize you. Um,
Yeah.
I I won't say I've traveled too much, because it's in the recent 5, 6, 7 years that I started to travel really as a
Mhm.
passion thing. But yeah, I've been to a lot of been to Goa a couple of times, and then hills, mostly Uttarakhand,
Mhm.
and then Shimla as well a couple of times. Um, then I think in 2018 went on a trip to South Korea, which was pretty good.
Oh.
Um, yeah, outside India, it was like my first experience up until now, which was great. But never discounting what India can offer you. Every time you go to the hills, it just
Mhm.
mesmerizes you, and every time you go to places like Goa or Pondicherry,
Yeah.
again a different experience altogether. So yeah, travel
Absolutely.
is now my passion. The pandemic really put a lot of breaks to it
Uh,
because of uncertainty, restrictions, which I'd never felt like taking that risk, or just escaping those restrictions. It was just too much hassle. Like traveling is
yeah.
not easy, right? And then when you put these quarantine restrictions to it, just didn't feel worth it. So last 2 years didn't go uh, anywhere where I wanted to go. But now I think slowly and steadily I'll start exploring India more. So yeah, that's great.
Oh.
Um,
If you don't mind, I think I would definitely want to understand from you why South Korea, as in why you made that move to go there, and then eventually when you did go there, what is it that you have brought back to probably someone like me who might want to put that on my bucket list? So what is it that I probably need to look forward to,
yeah,
whenever
so
I do
South
travel?
Korea definitely not a run of the mill choice, but yeah, there's a story to it. Basically, one of my friends uh, was there at that point of time, and his family was there as well. So
Okay.
his family was there technically, and he was going to visit their family,
Mhm.
and so they had a house there, and then everything set up.
Mhm.
So like he asked me and one of like we are like three very close friends here since the
Okay.
last I don't know how many years. So he asked me and that other friend that like I'm going on these dates. If you guys want to accompany me, just let me know.
Mhm.
Like the stay is all set, and so we could save a lot of money, like not booking hotels. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
we just bounced upon that opportunity. I think that was a great opportunity. So we went with him, stayed at his place for I think it was a 15-day trip, pretty long trip. Went to a couple of
Mhm.
other locations, other islands, other beaches as well from there.
Yeah.
So like the intent was there to accompany him because he was visiting his family, and because we also like South Korea doesn't come into picture when you're making the itinerary or you want to travel abroad, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was a
Yeah.
great opportunity, but I think it's an amazing place. And like South Korea's travel was not famous, I think, 10 years back, but since the last 8 to 10 years, it has
Mhm.
been gaining a lot of international attraction as well because of K-pop and other trends that are coming out of that place. But
Yeah.
I think it's great. It's one of those Asian countries where you can like it has everything which the world has to offer. But the good thing about
Mhm.
it is that because the whole touristy thing is not that much there, and the population is
Yeah.
also fairly low, so you can
Yeah.
experience everything in its pristine nature.
Yeah.
Like
Okay. Got it.
if you
Got it.
think about Paris or New York before pandemic, I think even now as well, because pandemic is probably left left behind, you see this humongous touristy crowd, right? So it's still very
Mhm.
crowded, still very populated, although it's very beautiful. And
Yeah.
other parts
Yeah.
of India as well. But South Korea is as beautiful as any place could be,
Oh,
and you just remove all the crowd. So it
mine is the people.
was sorry.
Mine is the people.
Yeah.
So it retains the beauty of the structural,
Oh yeah.
aesthetic, artificial and natural aspect, but not too crowded. I'm not bumping into people while I'm trying to
Not at
sort
all.
of, look at the glory of this particular
Yeah.
this thing. Okay, not
Yeah.
bad.
It
I
was
think in
great.
terms of cuisine, it wasn't too much of a difference for you, right? Because if you were staying with your friend, is he from India? Is he Indian
Yeah,
origin
yeah.
or is he?
He's
Okay.
from India. His parents work at the embassy of
Oh, okay.
of South Korea. They had like they are back now, but they had a project or something sort of there. So they were there for a couple of years. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, so the whole experience was good. From a food standpoint, definitely it was like the food out there is mostly non-vegetarian, and
Yeah.
it's like they eat almost everything from beef, pork, seafood,
Mm.
octopus, whatever you can
Hmm.
imagine. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a shock from that standpoint, but uh, I used to eat non-vegetarian at that point of time, but I left it now, completely
Oh,
vegetarian.
why is that? I mean, I know
um
we are going down another track, but I think since you brought it up, I'm always fascinated by people who take that decision,
hmm.
and following it through is a different aspect altogether. But making that first move. So, what caused you to sort of look
um
in that direction?
I don't know, I was like I was having some health issues, stomach issues particularly. Then
Okay.
somebody suggested try to leave non-vegetarian, see, and it actually made a difference.
Okay.
uh, so that one was it. And then other thing about being concerned about the environment as well and stuff like that, uh,
Hmm.
which sort of, and like all that jazz. But yeah, the health aspect was really beneficial.
Okay.
So when I
Got
left
it.
it, the all the stomach issues got resolved. um,
Oh.
but yeah, I mean, it's not like my family also is a bit leaning towards vegetarian food these days.
Okay.
Everything came to picture. I was at home and stuff like that. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like very much into, I won't touch non-vegetarian stuff like that. If let's say let's say if I go to South Korea to work for a couple of
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
nowhere there's vegetarian food. Vegetarian for them
Oh,
is
okay.
like chicken and eggs. That's what their
Ah,
McDonald's vegetarian menu has. Non-vegetarian is
oh,
like beef, pork, and other stuff, right?
okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
if at that point of time, like you can't survive saying that you're vegetarian. Either you have to starve
Yeah.
or you eat non-veg. So when there's no choice. But when you have choice, I would choose vegetarian. I think health is what really motivated to me, because I felt that change. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like against people eating vegetarian food. I think it
Yeah.
has been a part of our culture since very prehistoric times, like since
Yeah.
tribal times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just a personal choice. Nothing. I don't. I generally don't think too much when I'm eating, because
Yeah.
uh, really not my concern. Like I eat almost everything, anything that comes across. So really don't pay
Yeah.
attention towards that. And unless it's healthy, it's cooked well, it's prepared well, it's all fine.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
So yeah, the whole experience was pretty good in South Korea. But I really do plan to travel in India a lot, and I'm very adamant of the fact that there are a lot of good places out here as well.
Oh, great. All right. I think in the same breath, since you're also a creator, I actually happen to come across this group of creative folks. Primarily, I don't think it's India. It's a more of a global offering. I think it was Instagram or somewhere where I stumbled on their offering. So what they do is they bring together creative people from all over the world, I think, if not at least very India specific, and they host these amazing getaways to uh, all the beautiful places that you can think about, right? Shillong, I think Shillong just happened last month. I think in July they're going to Croatia, and it's a very good package. They sort of bundle it up in a very good package. So if you are interested and you it's very good from an exploration perspective. You get to meet people who are creative on the
Mhm.
creative side, um, whatever industry that you want to take.
Well, like,
And
is it a group? Like, what are they called?
it's I think it's called the Beach House Project. I'll look up
Okay,
the name. I'll sort of shoot it through you to through WhatsApp or something. But I think it's
okay.
called the Beach House Project. And I have been really interested in their Croatia gig, which is happening later this year. And the good thing is it's also very economic, right? Because they're hosting this for like probably 20 or 50 odd people, so they get it at a very good rate, and then eventually we as consumers get it at a very good rate. So it's
Okay.
definitely worth exploring, just from the perspective of exploring a new place, exploring it with people who are also like-minded, who are creators, and getting one thing off of your list of things in terms of just travel. So do check it out. I think I do have plans later this year, if everything allows, to explore at least Croatia, because that's one of the places that I did have in mind.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I
Yeah,
thought since
definitely.
we're
I
on the
think
same breath,
I think that's a
yeah,
great that's a great thing to do. That's a great idea in itself, and I'll definitely look more into it. Never heard of it though, but yeah, sounds very interesting.
absolutely. Maybe you and
Awesome.
I can go together, man. Let's plan Croatia together.
Yeah, definitely. If everything aligns, we
Yeah.
can actually plan for that. Cool. So brings us to, I think, the last question of the entire podcast. This
Mhm.
is something which I took from another podcast, so won't take credit for that question, but really, makes you think a lot about where you are currently and what you want to do in life. Like it's a very powerful question, I think. So it
Mhm.
goes something like this: like when you're old, let's say you hit 90 years of age, and you
Mhm.
look back on your life, how do you want people to remember you?
Um, First of all, it's hard for me to imagine me at 90. So it's a very, very
No,
painful thought in itself.
I mean, imagine, that happen.
Yeah.
I think,
Some ways down the road,
yeah,
right? I'm just looking into the sunset, thinking back, I have like a crutch or something. Okay. So I think my notion around that is oriented on the philosophy where, let's say, if you take the example of a tombstone, right? They never really write your name and then Romel Joseph, product manager, you know, 1992 to I don't know, wherever it is. You write stuff. You write things that are more oriented around how you were as a rounded individual in your circle of loved ones, right? Caring father, a loving brother, and all of those things. So in the same breath, and I'm just taking you to my take, when I'm at that day and age and I look back, I want people in those different walks of life to remember me in the flavor of those walks of life, right? I would want my best friend to remember me in the essence of a best friend. I don't want him to remember me as a great product manager,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or as a great UX guy, or as a great musician. I want him to remember me as his best friend or her best friend. Take the example of my mom. I want her to remember me as a great son. She doesn't care for what I do, what are the products that I've made in my life. Similarly, people in the product community, maybe people who I've helped out, in the product community, something as basic as the customers of my product, right? I want them to remember me as someone who gave them a great product. People like you and I today remember Steve Jobs as that visionary who gave us Apple.
Yeah.
Is that the same way that probably Steve Wozniak looks at him? Is that the same way that probably his family looks at him? No, all of us carry different flavors. So I think I would really want to be someone who these different people look up to as someone who could actually give them something to, in the traditional sense, remember me by. But what I actually mean by that is there is some aspect that I leave behind with them that they keep coming back to, maybe regularly, and they know me, they remember me for that. That change, I think I would want, and be that change agent in all of those different walks.
Beautiful. That's that's I think a beautiful response to that. I've had some really good responses to this, but I think this is up to the mark. Probably, um, I
See,
think,
that's how you would remember me as, right? You will be remembering me as the guy who gave a very good answer to this question.
yeah.
See,
No,
that's the flavor of
I think what
it.
you said with your friends, with your mom, like
Yeah,
probably with your sister, right? She would like to remember as you as a good brother. Uh,
yeah,
Probably you're a great product manager, but it's all it's not that tasteful when it comes to those deep relationships, which makes
absolutely.
sense. And the tombstone never has your accolades from
Hmm.
your professional life, but it's more what kind of person you were, and then how you improved the people around you, how you impacted the society, and took humanity forward, which is, I think, a great notion. Great, Romel. I think a great point to end the conversation. Was really really interesting talking to you. Um,
Likewise, man.
I
Likewise.
I didn't think that the conversation would go that long, but then we took so many trajectories, we took so many segues onto it, and just to cover everything and make it a holistic conversation, which is great. And really, I really like when a conversation goes to uncharted territories where you never planned for it, and that happens. I think that brings the best out of the conversation and the podcast. So thank you so much for your time, Romel. You could have
Absolutely.
been
Thank you so
doing
much for your time. Thank you so much
thousand
for being the great navigator over here for the
um,
trajectory of our conversations. Yes.
yeah, I mean, I never really prepared for it, but I'm really really happy the way it turned out. But thanks for your efforts, thanks for and trust with the podcast and everything else. And I really wish you all the best for your future. We'll
Thank
definitely
you so
look
much.
forward to your work coming out very, very soon. And yeah, all the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And keep the great work going. Keep generating one of those areas that I talked about, right? Content. You're putting a lot of good content out there, speaking to a lot of great people. I think keep doing that and do a lot of good things with it. And thank you for having me once again. It was a lovely conversation. I absolutely enjoyed it. It never really felt like we were on record or something. It just felt natural.
Yeah,
So thank you for
that's
that.
how I really want the conversations to feel. All right, great.